Hello. So today we're going to talk about footage and how we can get it a little bit more stable and how we can try and absorb some of that movement in our body. Okay, so let's have a look at these 4 clips. The first one here was filmed at 24 frames a second. The second one here with the drone was filmed at 60 frames a second. The third one here with a camera handheld, okay, which was a GoPro, was 100 frames a second. And the final one, which is a handheld Sony, okay, which was 120 frames a second. Let's go back to the first one. This was filmed on a tripod. So the tripod absorbs all of that human movement. So anything like up and down, left to right, any offset from the horizon, it absorbs everything because it's locked in place. Typically the head on a tripod, you can look up and down and left to right. Now we could use pitch and tilt and everything else, but I'll just keep it nice and straightforward. So this is aimed at people who've got their camera and they've created some footage. They're like, well, that doesn't look anything like what I see on TV. Right? So we'll talk a little bit about what we can do to make the footage a bit better. Right? So each one of these 4 clips is filmed at a different frames per second. All right. Now, the idea is that when I film something like, for example, the drone, I might have a little bit here that I want nice and slow. But if I film it at 30 or 24 frames a second, I can't slow it down because it'll look juddery. It'll look like a very slow cartoon or something. So, and our eyes and TV were adjusted to watching 24, 25 or 30 frames a second. All right. So this one here and the next one here with the grass handheld is filmed at 100 frames a second. Now, I basically lifted the camera out of the grass and I knew I could not keep this stable. So if I film at 100 frames a second, I can slow that footage down and I can give the impression that it was really stable and I was really hands like a surgeon mode. But, it's just slowing it down. The final one here was just looking at a house. Okay. Horizons are relatively straight. And it's just tilting downwards to reveal the house. Okay. Right. So this first one here has no intention of being sped up or slowed down. The lady's walking to the guy here. So as it is, some colour grading, some colour correction, and whatever else they can do there. But this one here, I may want to slow it down. So I did film faster. Now I have the option here to slow this down 50% because I filmed at 60 frames a second. And I can take it down to 30 or 25 frames a second. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just chop this clip to make it a bit more faster. Right. Now just click on right click, go to real-time controls, reduce this down to 50%. So now this clip is going to play back at 30 frames a second. So it will look slower. Okay. Now, any movement in the drone will be absorbed by, not all of it, a lot of the movement of the drone will be absorbed by the fact that I've slowed down the footage. Okay. So, the next clip, this one here. This is handheld, 100 frames a second. Now, I could slow this down to 25%, all right, of 100 to get this down to 25 frames a second. So, if I right click on it, with the real-time controls, change this, change speed, 25%. Okay. So now if I play this through, it's not perfect, but it's a lot better, and I can see the horizon slightly, a few degrees negative from 0. So this could need to be altered. And in the last clip here, the house was 120 frames a second. Now I could slow this down to 25%, but it's slow enough as it is. So I'll leave this one as okay as it is. But this one here, the horizon is changing. Right, so to absorb some of the movement from your body, we can film at a higher frames per second. When we get into Resolve or Premiere, we can reduce that speed down from whatever we're at, say 100, go down to 25% or 50%. We can reduce that speed. Right? So that does absorb quite a lot of the movement. Right? Now the reverse of this is this. If you film something in 25 frames a second, like a drone shot, for example, of going across a field looking at trees, and you do speed this up to 120 frames a second, you will see how that drone is not as smooth as you think it is. So you actually can create problems with your footage by speeding it up. All right. So try it. It's a good experiment. All right. So we've reduced the speed in 2 clips. All right, to make them a little bit smoother. What else can we do? Well, we can go into the inspector. We can look at the transform, and we can look at the rotation angles. Okay. So this one here. Okay. We can reset the horizon to get it a bit more straighter. Okay. But down the bottom, we've got stabilisation. We can click stabilise, right, and that will crop off a bit of the image. This little video clip will never end up in the cinema in London or anywhere else, so cropping off a few percent makes no difference. Okay. So we've got various things we can do here. So the first tip is film at a higher frames per second. The second tip is use the transform and the stabilization in the inspector. All right, so that will start to absorb a lot of movement in the camera. The next tip is actually in your hands, the camera. So what can we do? Well, an example is I have a project coming up in a couple of weeks that involves a lot of forward movement within a property just outside London. So, and a lot of this could involve walking. Now, I'm not particularly good at walking the camera, so my intention now is to think about how I could use the drone to do this, because they're very good. They've got an inbuilt gimbal, and I can set it on a path and record moving forwards. And that will give me exactly the same effect as maybe holding a gimbal in my hand and getting a ninja walk and creeping forward. With a drone, I can stand remotely and get a lot more stable. What else could I do? I could look on Facebook Marketplace and buy a cheap gimbal and practice walking around my house with a gimbal until I get some stable footage. I can make sure also if my camera's got a inbuilt stabilizer, it's turned on, both on the lens and on the camera, internal. I can also, I do hear people say 3 points of contact on the camera, which is great. Put the strap on it and hold it out front with and everything. Not always practical. What I would say is get the horizon straight in the footage, all right, and then practice around your house. You don't have to do the huge, great walks forward for 10 or 100 or 1,000 meters. Okay, your arm could start at your chest, and you can extend your arms out forwards. Okay, that would capture probably 3/4 of a meter, all right, of forward motion. Your body's not actually moved forward at all. You could do one step plus that extension of the arms, which will give you stable footage. Another thing you can do is this. If you can get low with your hips and absorb some up and down movement with your legs and go quite slowly, you can find yourself sections of your footage that you can cut out as being more stable than the rest. Okay. So monopods, okay, a single pole on the back of your camera, on the bottom of your camera, can really aid to getting a bit more stable with the camera. Using a fence post, a bench, a wall, holding the camera against a tree, up against the side of the wall. So there are a lot of things you can do to mitigate or absorb some of that human motion into the camera by using an external object if you can. But if you really do have to hold your camera in your hand and make a movement, try different frames per second, maybe a bit faster, 60 or 100 or 120, and move forward with that camera a bit faster, okay? And then slow it down in post-production. Let's see how it looks. If it's not what you expected, go back and try again. Do it in your front room, in your bedroom. Go up and down your stairs in your house. Keep the camera level, all right? And see what happens, all right? What else is a good tip towards this? This really is a case of practice makes perfect. Don't rely on the internal stabilization of a GoPro or a camera. It will stabilize to a certain amount, But if that horizon's crooked, or is a constant motion of being out of where you want to see, that's what you're going to see. All right. So if you're trying to hold it straight, move forward gently, and then see the footage afterwards. Preview it on the screen. Okay. What else can we do to absorb body movement? Gimbals, as I said, Facebook Marketplace. They take practice as well. What else have we got? Monopods, tripods, using external objects, drones. If you can get your hands on a drone, that forward motion, use the drone. You may as well have a camera on a rail, which is so stable. So I think that is about it. Right, the last thing I want to touch on is frames per second and shutter speed. Now, there's no point in saying all these different rules, like 180 rule and all the rest of it. What we're going to say is this: don't aim to get your camera to manual mode as fast as possible. Okay, it's not about manual mode. It's about recording something that you want to see when you take the footage from your memory card on your computer. Whether it's in manual mode or shutter priority or aperture priority or automatic or wherever it's going to be in, that makes no difference. If you're getting the footage that you want, all right, that's the priority. But I would say one thing, okay, this. If you put the camera in shutter priority mode, get the shutter twice the speed of the frames per second. So if you're going to film at a 60 frames per second, get the shutter speed up to 1 over 120. So it's twice the speed, 240 even. 1 over 240 if you're going to film at 120 frames per second. At 60 frames per second, okay, you want your shutter speed at 1 over 120, at 30 frames per second, 1 over 60, and so on. Okay, so the number needs to be twice the size. All right, that'll give you some nice smoother footage. When we say smoother, we don't mean as in stabilised footage. We mean as the frames appear on the screen we're looking at continuously. All right, so it's smoother to the eye, not sharp and over contrast or whatever. Okay, just smoother. So get the camera onto shutter speed priority. Try it. Okay, if you want automatic, go for if you want manual, go for manual. Set your shutter speed at 240, your frame per second at 120, your ISO, get it nice and low to maybe 100 or 200. Start filming, see how it works out. If you find it's pitch black, then reduce your aperture, 1.8 to 2, and so on. Make the hole slightly bigger. If you'll find it super bright, maybe reduce the aperture down to 11, f11, all right, and so on. f20, f22, reduce that light going in. If it's not possible, buy some ND filters. Okay, they will reduce the light that's going to go into the camera. Or you could let the camera do some of the work for you and put it onto shutter speed priority and just get the shutter speed twice the amount of the frames per second. All right, and experiment with it. See how it comes out. All right? I hope this has been helpful for you. It did drag on a bit, but it's quite an important bit. I think what it is that we all buy cameras in the early days, we take some footage and go, oh my god, that's not what I expected. And then suddenly people are saying, frames per second, 180 rule, shutter speed, ISO, and all these amazing big words, tilt and pan and pitch and all the rest of it. And we end up sitting there going, what on earth is going on? All right? So I hope this has been helpful, and thank you very much.